And we're going to hang out and find out a little bit about the history of cake decorating and the shop and what Ilene is doing nowadays. So jump on, tag your friends, share this with groups. I'm going to jump on my phone so that I can see comments. We're using a new software system here. So hopefully this works seamlessly. Throw me some hearts. Show me you're there. We're going to do a live Q&A, so you are welcome to comment any questions that you want, and I will keep track of those, and we'll go through and have Ilene answer some questions from you guys as well today. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to, if you have not already met her, the amazingly talented and one of the kindest people I have ever met, Ilene McHone. All right. Hey, Ilene.
Hi, friends.
All right. So first thing we all want to know is, how's retirement going for Ilene?
Well, the first couple months were kind of strange because I was so used to being around people all the time at the shop, the employees and the customers, and I was home with my dog. I had no one to talk to. So I did a lot of sitting around. You know, I had all these projects to do, but it's like, I can sit and read a book. So I didn't get as much done as I thought. But
yeah,
I just got adjusted and was getting back to being social because I hadn't been very social with the shop 6 days a week and going out to lunch. And then here we have this virus. So I'm locked in my house again. I haven't got a chance to really take advantage of this.
Did you get to work on your garden at all, or are you stuck inside with this weather?
Oh, no, I've been out with the plants and transplanting and fixing up a flower bed in the back that got ignored, and do a lot of walking. So I walk almost every day and
That's awesome.
Get out and about.
Well, very cool. So what kind of dog do you have?
We have a little schnoodle, half schnauzer, half poodle, named Snickers. And Mike took him upstairs because otherwise he'd be sitting right beside me in the park.
Trying to share the screen time.
He follows me wherever I go.
Oh. Yeah, he's very sweet. I usually, like with Finn, especially as young as he is, I have a 3-year-old for those who don't know. Little dogs don't particularly like him, but he is very sweet. Good dog. Okay, so how long have you been?
Snickers loves anybody that walks in the door is different. Go ahead.
How long have you been cake decorating?
I actually started when I was a sophomore in high school. So I was 15 years old. So over 50 years. Just a little bit over 50 years. How it all started was, I have a sister that's 7 years older than me. Her name's Donna. Hopefully she's watching. And she was a home ec major in college. So she took an adult evening class at our community college in town in cake decorating, just to maybe have some of those skills when she taught home ec.
Yeah.
So then she had the Wilton book with all the pictures in it. And in the center of the book was how to make everything, the borders, the roses, the flowers, the shells. And the back was the catalog to order stuff. Well, Wilton is based in Chicago, and we were just 50 miles south of Chicago at the time. So we were pretty close to the Wilton store. So that was nice because I did go up there a couple times. And so I was always interested in cake decorating. We had a family friend that was a wonderful, wonderful cake decorator and made fabulous wedding cakes. And as a kid, I was always kind of enthralled with that. I thought the dress was pretty and the flowers were nice, but I loved the wedding cakes. So anyway, so now that the tools were home, I just picked them up and looked in the book and read and started practicing. And there was 5 kids in the family, so there was opportunities for birthday cakes and holidays and stuff like that. And my sister Donna was a senior in college that year, so she wasn't home as much. She was living on campus and doing her student teaching and things like that. But I just practiced whenever I had an opportunity. And I'd been maybe doing it for a couple of years, pretty amateurish. And then a few friends started asking me to make birthday cakes. And so I would do a little bit of that, but not a whole lot. And then when I was a junior in college, majoring in elementary education, my sister Donna got married. So she and I made her wedding cake. So that was my first wedding cake experience, with her wedding cake.
Was a wedding cake for a friend? For your sister?
It was for my sister's wedding. And so then I had pictures of the wedding cake. And so then my junior year in college, my other sister's roommate got married, Beth. So she asked me to make her wedding cake. So that was my first solo wedding cake. And I do have some pictures of that cake, but they're not very clear. It's pictures that back in those days weren't. But it was a typical cake with the pillars and the shells and the garlands and, the old style of cake decorating and the buttercream roses. Then now fast forward to the next year, my senior year in college, and one of my good friends, Barb Enns, was getting married right after we graduated. So she asked me if I'd make her wedding cake. It's like, are you sure? There's gonna be 200 people there. She goes, yeah, you did your sister's, you did Beth, you can do mine. So I said, okay, I'll do it. Well, then another college friend, Cheryl Collins, talked to Barb and said, who's going to make your wedding cake? And Barb said, Eileen. So then Cheryl came to me and said, would you make mine too? It was like, your dad's chairman of the art department. He's an artist. You want me to make your cake? Yes. So we have pictures of it. Hopefully we get to see them later on the screen here of that cake.
Is that one of the ones?
That was in 1970. Yeah, there's a picture of the couple and of the cake that I sent you.
Okay, cool.
So I'm friends with all these girls on Facebook still. So I wrote them and asked to send me pictures.
So they could be watching right now.
Yeah, they might be. Hopefully they leave a comment.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of it. And then I graduated. I moved up to the Chicago area and was teaching school and made couple wedding cakes up there for people. And then I moved to Indianapolis and to teach. And people in the church I was going to knew I decorated cakes. So all of a sudden I was the cake lady at our church. It was a large church and quite a few weddings. And so started making cakes for people on the west side of Indianapolis on 10th Street. And quit teaching when our first son was born. And I stayed home and was quite bored. And, I would do maybe 10 weddings a year.
That's a lot.
Well, I was doing it for people in the church, and then their friends would see it, and then their friends would call, So
Yeah.
I was doing about 10 weddings a year, and party cakes here and there, just out of my house. And then when our youngest son was getting ready to start kindergarten, it's like, what you gonna do now, Eileen? The kids will be in school. So I applied to start my master's degree at IUPUI. Then I had been competing at the Indiana State Fair, which really, really is where I honed my decorating skills. It's the first place I ever saw gum paste. First time I ever did gum paste was for the State Fair. So someone
like competitions are beneficial for that?
Oh yeah, because that's where I honed my fine skills, was for the State Fair. I wasn't doing gum paste and stuff for customers much yet. I had not even heard of gum paste till I saw it. Someone else do it at the State Fair.
That's awesome.
I took my first gum paste class at what is now Miss B's in Speedway. It was
Awesome.
Cake Create then. And I took 2 classes there. And those are the only cake decorating classes I've ever had. Everything else has just been practice experience. And so then someone saw my work at the State Fair, and they were opening a cake shop in Indianapolis. And they convinced the State Fair to give them my phone number, which they really were not supposed to do. And so they called and asked if I wanted to work for them. So now I was like, what do I do here? I was preparing to go to graduate school and continuing the education, program. And so I thought, well, I can go to school and raise a family and work part-time. So I took the job. And it had been maybe a couple months after I took the job that I heard back that I'd been accepted into graduate school. So now it was like a major crossroad. Am I going to follow education, or am I going to stay in this cake world? And so you know what my decision was. Forget graduate school. I never went and stayed in the cake world. I thought, I'd rather play with cakes than get corral kids all day. I was in elementary education.
So I feel like the way you started is very similar to a lot of home bakers now. You started off at home, self-taught, learning from what you saw. A lot of people are using YouTube and videos and stuff like that.
Which we didn't have back then. You
had books. You just flipped.
One book, the Wilton book. That's about it. I mean, there really was not much resource back then at all.
Yeah.
And it was more just hands-on practice, and then taking the skills of like the gum paste. I took those classes because that was very new in the United States. And the first class I taught, she was from South Africa, and gum paste is actually a British technique. And so England, Canada, and South Africa were the ones that were doing it. And so she came to the United States and spread her joy all over the country. She traveled all over the United States teaching this class. So I was privileged to learn from her.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So anyway, I worked for this cake shop for 2 years, and then they decided the cake work was a little harder. I don't know what they thought, but anyway, they just at Christmas time decided to close the shop at the first of the year. So, okay, no more job. And so then I went back to doing stuff at home. And then another cake shop on the south side of Indianapolis called. They knew my work and asked me to do all their gum paste for them, because this is before gum paste could be purchased ready-made. That hadn't happened yet. So I went down there and worked for a couple years and was helping them out, and then decided to do my own thing.
Was that a scary leap to decide to open your own shop?
Yes. The one thing I did not like about the store I was at was that she never gave me any credit for anything I did. And so I would make all these beautiful flowers for the wedding cakes and stuff, and the brides would come in and return the cake stands, because everybody had cake stands back then and pillars. And, she'd be standing right in front of me and giving compliments to the lady that owned the shop about the beautiful cake, and she never gave me an ounce of credit for anything I did. So it wasn't very encouraging, Yeah. And not that I was, feel I had to be proud or boast. But if I ever had my own cake shop, I was going to give the person that did the cake the credit. And I've always done that, because that's
having worked, directly for you as the decorator. I feel like every time people came in, you would pull the decorators up front to show off, like, this is the lady who did your cake, and it was kind of intense.
I said, come out front here.
The customer,
let me tell you who made that cake and bring you out front.
Yeah,
mainly the result of my
made it more of a community and a sense of family.
Yeah, because it is a team effort.
That's very cool.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. Let's see, where am I at with questions here? I don't want to miss anything. So at the end, we're going to go through some pictures, and Eileen's going to tell us a little bit about some of the most iconic cakes that happened with her decorating history here.
Yeah, I was able to pull up some of those old cakes I made at the very beginning before I even had the store. And then I've always said you can tell within about a 8 to 10 year window of when, especially wedding cakes, when that wedding happened, just by the cake.
Yeah. Feel like it's the same now?
It changes, and the cakes change in style, just like the dresses and the flowers. The flowers change. They used to do those just a few years ago. They were doing those tight little bouquets with the handle, and now they're doing these great big huge things. You wonder how they can even carry them with all these huge flowers and leaves and ferns, And that's just been the last 3-4 years. So everything changes, and you can almost tell when their wedding happened by what their cake looks like.
We do a lot. There are a few designs that are super popular right now, as you know, and we do those like most of the weddings are the same few designs. So.
And then you get the one that wants something really custom, but the general trends cakes are the same in a period of time. So
that's cool.
I have a friend that talking to her, a friend I met at our church, and she in the conversation, I told her I'd owned classic cakes, and she goes, oh, you did our daughter's wedding cake. When was her wedding? 1999, the 4th year into the store. And right away I thought present cake. I didn't say it. And I said to her, so what did the cake look like? Oh, it looked like a most gorgeous stack of boxes, and even it looked like a present. It's like, yeah, 1988 to about 2005. That's what they were.
Oh, goodness. Yep. It's weird. I mean, I've only been doing this for 10 years and I can already see like very clear lines of what was popular at what time. So I can imagine over that long that trends are very like clustered.
Yeah. When I first started, it was still pillars.
Yeah.
It wasn't all the fancy swags and garlands that were on the 80s cakes, but there was still pillars in the cake. They would have looked odd back then not to have a cake stacked all up, cake on cake. And that's about all we've done for quite a few years now is cake on cake.
Interesting. So they weren't really done at all that way.
No, they were most of them were on pillars. So I started well, we lived on the west side, and I had tossed this idea of a cake shop around in my head for a couple of years. And I had told a number of people in talking about it and we lived on the west side. Ever since Mike and I have been in Indianapolis, we were on the west side. And I don't know how many people, if I ever open a cake shop, it's going to be in Carmel. Because I knew people in Carmel would buy custom cakes. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do custom cakes that they couldn't find anywhere else.
Yeah. And I have to say, like right now, with everything going on, to see the community rallying around us, you built a community here in Carmel. Right. It's not just a business. So that's very cool. This legacy is so personal and so real. It's not just about the cakes, it's about the community that you've built with the customers and with the staff. And it's very cool to see that. I'm sorry you're stuck at home and you can't be here to see it. But hopefully you're seeing some of that online. Like it's just so different than the normal way of doing business right now. But people are rallying up around us, and that's what you built. So thank you.
Anybody that's been to the store, if they'll look 2 doors down to the right, they'll see a caterer.
Yeah.
And somehow I hooked up with a caterer that was in that building. It was a different company, but there was a caterer in that building back in the 90s. And I think we must have run into each other where I did a cake and they did the catering for a wedding is how we hooked up. But then they asked me to do cakes for them. So I was running from the west side up here to Carmel, bringing cakes to them. And when I decided to open the shop one day when I was up there, I said, hey, you guys want to open a storefront up here in Carmel? And they said, oh, yeah, we'll keep our eye out. And 2 days later, they called me and said, we have this area in the back of our shop that's just storage. We could clear that out, and you could just share our building. I said, well, check with your landlord. And so they did, and they said, there's no problem doing that. This is where I started. And all I had was a sign in the window because the caterer had the sign overhead the store and had the sign out on the marquee out front. You know, I didn't have anything. So I just had a little sign in the window saying classic cakes. I was back in the back corner of that store doing my thing. And they had big mixers and ovens and walk-in coolers. So I didn't have to buy all that big equipment. But I still had to make my icing in my tiny little KitchenAid. Even for 3 or 4 weddings, I had to be making that little KitchenAid because their big mixer that they only had one. The beater did not hit the bottom of the bowl, so it wouldn't mix. It would make you can do cake mix in it because cake batter in it because you could take a scoop and stir it and get everything incorporated. But icing's too heavy. In those big bowls, you couldn't take a scoop and scoop up the bottom. And it didn't make good icing because you'd have this shortening, all this clump in the bottom of the bowl that the beater didn't hit. So I had to make all that icing in that tiny little KitchenAid mixer. And I actually hired people just to stand there and make icing all day.
So I've got a few questions for you here I'm going to ask you. The first one is from Terry Towner.
Terry.
Hello, Terry. She wants to know what cake trend you loved the most and which one you disliked the most.
Well, my experience in the 25 years is that my favorite was the one we were in, because it was always something new and different, so.
Yeah.
I've had so many different favorites. But I think just a classically piped cake with beautiful buttercream flowers is still gorgeous. Some of my favorite cakes had gum paste and lots of fondant and stuff on it, but the real skill really in all of this is piping. We've done some cakes. We've had a lot of like lace type, scrolly, paisley looking cakes the last 10 years. And so we've been doing a lot more piping like that in the last 10 years than we did, previous years. So it just, I like it all.
Do you have one that you disliked, or do you not have one that you disliked?
I've done a few cakes where if it had been my decision, I would have done it differently. Like we did a really wild, I have a picture of it here. When we were talking about the present cakes, I found some old pictures, and it was a present cake, and it was all in like navy blue and red and yellow, and now I'm dropping pictures, I don't know where it went, but it was like crazy. I thought, why would you have this like red, blue, yellow, green, orange, all these crazy colors, each tier, like it's wrapped in wrapping paper, that color, it's like, that would not have been my choice, but anyway.
All right, I got another comment here from Ryan McHone. He says he remembers the fountains.
The what?
The fountains.
Oh, yes. Well, those were the ones when I was doing them at home in the 80s. That was the big style. So, yeah, that's what he remembers as a kid. I found that wild cake picture.
Oh, you did?
That was a wedding cake.
It's very colorful.
Yeah, that would not have been my first choice.
It does look like a stack, like it looks more like a stack of presents with the different wrapping paper, but
yeah,
it's very busy.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was the present cake era.
Carrie Cash says, what is Eileen's favorite cake flavor, and what is Mike's?
Mike, what's your favorite cake flavor? Quick. Chocolate. That's what I figured he'd say. I have one all-time favorite. I mean, I've eaten so much cake and so many flavors of cake, but hands down, almond pound with chocolate truffle.
Almond pound with chocolate truffle. It's still one of the most popular. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so guys, keep asking questions. You can comment, and then
I didn't eat a lot of cake, but if I wanted to, okay.
Okay, so what advice do you have for people who are starting out decorating at this point in time? How do you feel like what do you feel like is a good way to start, a good way to learn?
First, just get an icing bag and practice even on a table, a cutting board, a cookie sheet, a piece of wax paper, whatever, and just practice piping. And then anytime you have an excuse for a cake, if it's a neighbor, a kid, Valentine's Day, Easter, just make cakes, because you have to learn how to ice and get things smooth and stack things too. And nowadays there is so much. You can watch anything on YouTube. I mean, anything. Google anything and you can find a video on how to do it. We had none of those resources back in 1970. So nowadays there are so many resources, and there's even really good cake groups on Facebook. I'm a member of a couple of groups, and they'll answer any question. And so there's just, and on those decorators have YouTube channels and Facebook groups, and you can learn so much just by getting online.
Very cool. One of the things that you taught me when I first started getting comfortable decorating was that what you see and what the customer sees is not always the same thing. And I feel like that gave me a little bit of freedom to not be so caught up in my cake isn't perfect, so I don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like that, like learning that balance between what needs to be perfect and what's okay if it's not perfect yet, gives you the freedom to decorate and keep decorating.
Well, I tried to educate the customers that we'll do the best we can. But even every cake decorator has their style. I can still look at your Facebook page and pretty much tell you which decorator decorated that cake. Until you get a bunch of really new decorators in there, then I won't know. But, I could walk in the cooler and I could see roses on a cake, and I would know which decorator put the flowers on a cake. Because everybody has their own unique way of doing things. It all kind of comes out the same in the wash, but every decorator is rather unique. And so we try to recreate it the best we can, and we've done amazing, followed their hopes and made it happen. But and then there's customers that trust us, that know us, have known us, that they'll just say, well, I want this theme, just go for it, do whatever you want to do. Sometimes those are the best cakes, because then the decorator can do what you can do the best to make that theme come to life. So sometimes it's just good to tell the decorator, well, I want something with pink roses. You just come up with something, or a castle or a snowman or whatever it is you want on the cake, and then let them.
I think that's cool, being able to like be flexible with customers and figure out if they want something specific or if they want something where we get to play a little bit more and they get surprised.
Right. We had a few customers that would, when maybe they would just give us a color direction, you know.
Yeah.
But those were always the fun customers, because then you got to try something maybe that hadn't even been seen yet, you know, something that you'd come up with and try it out. And then once you have a picture of it, you could sell it to somebody else. But sometime that first cake has to be created.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what was your first year of Classic Cakes like? So you started in 1995. We're hitting our 25-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that first year like business-wise compared to like what it is now? I mean, you built something that's grown over 25 years to be something totally different. How does that feel?
Well, it took a while to get established, because I was back in the corner of a caterer's office. I didn't even have a big sign out front, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing that I had was, I already had cake orders before I opened the shop, because I already had a clientele, because I was making them at my home and people knew me from those other cake shops. So when I opened the shop, I kind of already had a small clientele, but I wasn't known in the community by any means. I wasn't even from the community. And so, to be really, really honest, I can tell you exactly what thrust us to the whole Indianapolis area. We had been in business for about a year and a half, and by that time, an event planner had discovered us, because we had delivered weddings and they'd found us. And so that event planner began using us. And back then, there was just maybe 3 event planners in the whole city. I mean, there wasn't 100 like now.
That's very different than now.
Very different. But event planning was new back in 1990s. And this guy, it was Gary Brevard. Anybody event planner knows Gary Brevard, okay? He's one of the originals. He's not even with us anymore. And so it was Gary, and he did a lot of the really big clients in town. So he had found me. And so he was planning a birthday party, the 50th birthday party of Jeff Smulyan. Jeff Smulyan owns Indianapolis Monthly Magazine and a bunch of other stuff. He has monthly magazines in cities all over the United States, but he lives in Carmel. And so Gary asked me to do his birthday cake, and the party was at the Southwest Museum, Idle George Museum downtown.
Yeah.
And he didn't have any clear direction what to do, but it needed to be big, huge, because there was like 250 people coming. And so back then was when the present cake had just come out. I thought, you can make a present cake masculine. Part of decorating a man's cake is the challenge of making it masculine in this flowery, sweepy, rosy world we live in. So that I can make plaid and stripes and masculine colors, and that would be unique. You know, people really hadn't seen it yet much. So I did this huge, gorgeous, masculine present cake for his birthday. So most of his staff were there, and their staff flipped out over that cake. And so they contacted me just about 2 or 3 weeks after that party and wanted to do a feature on classic cakes in Indianapolis Monthly Magazine. It's like, oh, are you kidding me?
Awesome.
So they did like a 3 or 4 page, which is a lot of print in the magazine, article about me and classic cakes, and had like 3 or 4 pictures of cakes in the magazine. So now everybody in the city, I was only 2 years into the business, everybody in the city heard about classic cakes. That magazine has a huge pull all over the city. And by that time, I had outgrown my space at the caterers and was looking for storefront. And the storefront where we're still at came open. It used to be a bookshop and comic book trading shop. And so I asked the landlord about it, and he said, yeah, sure. So we moved into that side, which is where the showroom is now. You're sitting. That's where it was. Right. And after we'd been there about 8 years, the business next door to us left, which was a florist. And we were so out of space in that little space. So we bumped walls out and moved to that second storefront. And that's where we've been. That's where you're still at. So when I was in the process of moving into there, I now had one full-time employee. One. And
it's very different.
At a part-time, And so I kept telling them, I knew that article was coming out because they do it about 2 to 3 months ahead. They do their article, their magazine. I kept telling them, you guys, we got to be ready. We got to be ready. When that magazine comes out, we're going to get hit. You got to be ready. Come on, we got to be ready. And sure enough, as soon as that magazine came out, the phone started ringing.
That's awesome.
And then we grew very quickly. That, especially in being in our own space and having signage and that kind of thing too. So,
what a great way to kickstart it.
Yeah.
I've got a comment here from Linda Elliott.
Yes, Linda.
What is the biggest cake that you have done?
I sent Megan a picture of it. Hopefully it flashes up here yet tonight. It was for an NBA basketball player, and he's 7 feet tall, and he wanted the cake taller than him. So that's what we did.
That's awesome. I hope I have that picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question for you too. Do you have a favorite design to actually do when you're decorating a cake? You mentioned piping.
Mm-hmm. I still like the piping. When the scroll work came out, that's still popular. There's some designs that are iconic. They'll never go away. Tiny little dots, scroll work, those kinds of things. And that's still popular. That's been popular for almost the whole time I've had the shop. It started in the early 2000s, kind of. And
the trends that we have now, the semi-naked, the spatula marks, are those going to stick around?
I don't think so. I mean, a lot of these designs have some longevity and will last for, 10 years or so. So we'll see. Because it's really, about 3-4 years old now. And it depends. I don't know. When looking through these pictures tonight, I thought, or this afternoon when I was looking at pictures, I saw some cakes. I thought, oh yeah, we did those cakes for 2 years, but then they went away. Like really, the geode cake with the slash down the front, that was hot for 1 year. And
yeah.
It's evolved into some other kinds of geodes, but it's not like what it was in the original with that big slash down the front. There's not a whole lot of that going on anymore. Now, first year we did, quite a few, and then it kind of went down to 2, and now it's like maybe 1 a year or something. Last year I was there. So some things come and flash and go.
Yeah, that one did feel like it went very quickly.
Yeah.
What do you feel like the difference is when you do a styled photo shoot versus a wedding? What do you like? What don't you like about the?
Well, the thing about a styled photo shoot, my history of photo shoots is the person leading the shoot will usually give you colors and a theme, but then they let you design the cake. So it's really fun because that's where you can use your own creativity and design something instead of someone bringing in a picture and saying, I want my cake to look just like this. This time you get to make it up. And so maybe it's even a technique that you've been wanting to do in the store and want to show other people, maybe think it's something that would sell. So here's your chance to make this design and put it on display. So yeah, I love photo shoot cakes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I find them to be very exciting to be able to play and test the boundaries a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then have that, cake to show off to brides. Once they see the visual, then they want the cake.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always when so many brides pick things that they see. I can remember a couple times coming in and brides saying they liked a cake in the showroom, but they didn't want to buy it because it had purple ribbon on it. It's like, we can put pink ribbon on it.
People are so visual.
Yeah, they are.
And the benefit now with technology, we can pull up all these pictures on the tablet or on the website. And I know you had paper photo albums when I first started here. So seeing those visual pictures of the cakes makes a really big difference for people.
Yeah, I noticed that even just in the last couple of years I was there, brides were looking less and less at the things we had available. Like we went from the print pictures to the tablets. Those were nice because we could update them instantly. But still, a lot of them weren't even looking at the tablets. They brought stuff in because everything's online nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually have like people bringing in screenshots nowadays.
Yeah.
So I've got another question from Terry Towner here. When did the reveal cake become popular?
The baby showers reveal, baby sex reveal cakes. I would say they've been around about 7, 8 years maybe. And that was another thing, just popped out of the blue. I mean,
Yeah,
it's like reveal cake.
there's so many options for that now too.
Hey, it's another excuse to make a cake. I don't, yeah, we'll do reveal cakes.
I love it. Okay, I've got one more question, and then we're going to jump to the pictures that we have here. Over the last 25 years and even longer than that, you and Classic Cakes have received a lot of awards for different things.
Yep.
What was the coolest award? What was the most impactful award that you've received?
Oh, I mean, I don't know that anyone impacted us, more than any others. There's lots of different awards. I belong to a group called ILEA, International Event Planning Group, and they would have contests, but cakes kind of seemed to be a little bit low on their radar. It seemed like they were more for food and like the desserts, fancy desserts and that kind of thing. Yeah. In fact, on the national level, they did not even have a category for cakes. It was only on the Indiana level. They even had a category for cakes. They lumped it with desserts. So I entered it several years, but the cakes never, ever won an award. A deconstructed brownie beat this really cool cake. But we did win several group awards where the whole team of that event were invited as a group to enter the whole party. And so we've won a couple awards being part of those parties. So that was pretty cool.
Very cool.
And I really stopped competing personally when I opened the shop because I no longer had time to do it.
Yes.
In fact, I looked at the ribbons from the state fair, and I entered the state fair from 1984 to 1993. So I stopped even competing at the fair 2 years before I opened the store. There's a reason for it.
Yeah.
We lived at Speedway. We lived actually 4 blocks from Miss B's. So I was over there all the time because I was doing stuff at home, getting cake supplies and stuff. And they knew me, very, very well. And so I went in there one day to get something. And the girl that worked there all the time asked me, "Are you entering the state fair this year?" I said, "Well, I really hadn't made up my mind, if I was going to do it this year or not." So why'd you ask? Because I've been entering it for years. She goes, "Because we had a customer come in and ask us if you were entering it, because if you were entering it, they're not, because you always win."
Oh gosh.
So I stopped entering.
That must have felt weird. Like, oh, I'm known for how talented I am, but now people aren't wanting to decorate.
So I thought, give someone else a chance. So I just, I had won so many years, so I just stopped. I did enter some other competitions. There was one in Cincinnati that I entered, and then after I entered it, Sarah that worked for us entered it. It is a horticultural event at a like a big greenhouse kind of thing, and it's like a group of flower people. But they decided to have a cake division, and one of the divisions in it was something that had to be related to flower or fauna or something like that.
That's cool.
Then they had some other divisions too, and it was over all states. Like it was in Cincinnati, Ohio, but they had people from Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, just the surrounding states would come in. So that was kind of a fun competition to do that one. So I won some golds there. I did it for about 3 years, and then Sarah took over. I had a board that looked like a wood bench, and then I had a flower pot, and I had a little plant growing in the flower pot. This was all out of sugar. I had a trowel, I had garden gloves, I had dirt, I had seedlings on the board. So it was this whole like planting flowers, growing flowers kind of thing. And yeah,
that's awesome.
Won a gold medal.
Very cool. Donna Fraser Hoffman is asking, what is the greatest distance that a cake has traveled? Was it Florida to the grandkids?
Well, yes. Actually, we did. We have shipped a few cakes, and they have to be covered in fondant because icing won't ship. So we have shipped some cakes and sent them literally all over the country. And then I did a year ago on a plane deliver a 2-tier cake to Florida personally to my grandson. And I think the farthest wedding I ever did, and I sent you a picture of it, was very good friends of ours who lived in Indianapolis and moved to Kansas City, Kansas. And a couple years after they moved, their daughter got married. And it was the first year I had the shop, so I wasn't terribly tied down yet. So I actually closed the shop for half a week, and I went to Kansas City and did their daughter's wedding cake.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
and then I've done them in Wisconsin for my family, in St. Louis, Missouri, for cousins, for nieces and nephews of mine. So we've gone that far too, and several times.
Okay, I'm gonna pull up our first picture here. Let's see if this works. All right, Ilene.
That's me. And my wedding cake that I made.
That's the question everybody wants to know.
And you can't see the details on it very well, but yeah, it was served about 240 people. It had four of those little cakes around the bottom and 3 above on a pillar stand, but it was a central pillar stand, not the traditional 4 pillars. And so with the old-fashioned cake top. So that was my wedding cake. Oh, my wedding colors were blue, so it did have some blue flowers on it, which I'm generally against, but.
So there were blue flowers on your wedding cake.
And there was piping, there was like string work and some shells, and oh, there it is. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool.
Yep, yeah, that was my wedding cake. And that was the stand. The reason I had that stand, that was the stand my sister used in 1973 for her wedding cake. So I just bought her stand. At first, I was putting everybody's wedding cakes on that stand. Actually, the 2 I did in college, I put on the regular pillars. Those were my first really pillar cakes. But yeah.
That's crazy. So somehow we didn't talk about this.
Oh, gingerbread
for a long time.
I did Connor Prairie gingerbread for about, another 6 years maybe. And again, this was before I opened the store, and I did the last one. I opened the store in April in 95, and I did my last gingerbread the winter that year, and then never had time to do them again because they took about 80 hours to make.
Yeah.
That was my most complicated piece. It had 300 pieces of gingerbread in it because all those spires and all the moldings, it looks like moldings on the sides of the buildings and all that were molded. So that counted as a piece. And then I did all those V-shaped, roof pieces over the sides and the front. So each one of those roofs were 2 pieces. And there was 300 pieces in it. And that piece is about a little over 3 feet tall. That's how big it was.
That's wild. Does Connor Prairie still do
I think they do, and I haven't even gone to it because owning a shop just ties you down.
Yes. Okay, so these are not in any particular order. They uploaded just however they did. But here's another one.
The present cake. Those were always pretty, and they were pretty being twisted, and it really looked like a Linda Elliott. You're on there. That was your daughter's wedding cake, and in 1999. And they always had bows on it, and sometimes flowers, and they always had that big tied bow down in the corner and the big loop bow on top. And
yep,
those are all made out of sugar, folks.
I love the big full bow on top. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Those were really popular just for party cakes too for a while.
And we're still doing them as party cakes, but the weddings, they're not doing it now. But I was thinking about that when I was looking through the pictures. Just like now, you go in the cooler and there's 5 spatula mark cakes in there. We would go into the cooler and there'd be 5 present cakes every weekend. 4 or 5 wedding present cakes every weekend. It was so popular at that time. So
let's see. Here is another one.
That's a scroll work, and this wasn't too long ago, but scroll work started in the early 1990s. 1990s. So, very early when I started doing cakes, the scroll work started coming out. So.
Yeah, and that's a very classic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's one that will never, ever go, and it blends well with other things. If different tiers or different things, it's always nice to have one layer of scroll work in there. So, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see what's next here. I've got the damask stencil.
Damask was huge again for about 4 or 5 years, especially black and white.
This
Black
is
and white were very popular. So that had damask and dots. Dots will never go out of style either. And
yeah.
ribbon. Yeah. Pretty classic there.
Yeah, I love it with those bold flowers too.
Yep. I delivered that cake. I remember that one.
That's awesome. Okay, so this one you'll recognize for sure.
Oh, that was a one of a kind.
Yeah, this one's got a story for you.
Yeah. It's the only one I ever did. It's the only cake when someone asked me to make it, I had to practice. Because when I looked at the picture, I thought I knew how it was constructed and how to get it support and stand up. But this was my son and daughter-in-law's wedding cake. So this is for my family. And Corinne brought me this picture, and I looked at her and I said, I have made thousands of wedding cakes, and you're bringing me a cake I have to practice. So I made a 3-tier one, and it came out just as I thought it would, and it stayed up and it was fine, but I just wanted to be sure because I sure didn't want my own family's wedding cake falling over.
So I have a question for you. The circles that are going from one tier to the next, are those gum paste or fondant?
They're just fondant.
They're fondant.
They just stuck to the icing enough that they stayed in place. So we were very, very fortunate. That wedding reception was at Ritz here in Carmel. And we had done so many cakes with them and knew them so well. And so I asked if I could bring the cake earlier in the day and leave it in the cooler. I took it in pieces and leave it in the cooler because it has to be stacked up when it's cold. Otherwise, you'll leave your fingerprints all over trying to stack that up because there's really no borders or edges or anything on it. So they said yes, and they were very gracious. So they let me put the cake in the cooler. We went and had the wedding, and after the wedding was over, I went back over to Charles and pulled the cake out of the cooler and assembled it, and then put the rings on between those layers after it was assembled.
So that brings up another question I feel like we get a lot, and I'm sure you've always gotten this a lot. What does delivery look like? I mean, like we know the standard delivery, you get there, you drop off the cake, but when it's more than that, when you have weird stuff like this, what are some challenges that you had to deal with?
Well, some of the big cakes had to be work done on site, and flowers, and we'd always would have to contact the florist to see, are we putting the flowers in the cake, or you? And if we had to put the flowers in the cake, we had a longer window of delivery. So all that had to be figured out every week. Every week we had to figure out the delivery schedule and how much to allow for each delivery. And so, a cake like that, technically in pieces, I could have delivered it by myself. If there was, I knew my limit was 180 servings personally. That's what I could do. So any cake that was more than 180 servings, I had to take someone with me. So again, that's something else we had to figure out, which cakes were going in which vans and how many people had to go, and a lot of logistics into delivering the cakes. And then once you get there, sometimes you just walk in, set them down, and walk out. Sometimes you were there an hour to get flowers, 100 flowers between all the layers on top of the cake.
Yeah, like your last delivery. I hope that.
Very last delivery.
Let's see, I've got another one here for you.
Oh, that's our other son's wedding. They were very different, weren't they?
Yeah, different cakes.
Corinne brought me the picture that she wanted. Tiffany said to me, surprise me. I don't want to know what my wedding cake looks like till I walk in the room.
That's not common.
It's the only bride I ever had say that.
That's so cool.
So
well,
she let me design it. And their wedding colors were pink and black. And so I asked her a couple of questions. I asked her if I could use chocolate brown instead of black, and she said yes. And then I asked her if she wanted it contemporary or traditional, and she said contemporary. So I knew contemporary, I knew pink, and I knew brown, and then I just went with it.
So when was this, roughly?
They got married 14 years ago this May.
Okay, wow. Because it doesn't look contemporary anymore.
For people who know me by my grandchildren, this is the Florida couple.
I think a lot of people know that.
They see me going down there all the time. That's where I'm going.
This one took a while. Oh, it's so small.
That's all right. I think I might have a close-up of that. I don't know if you have it or not, but this was the very last cake delivery I did in my entire career. All of those literally thousands of wedding cakes I delivered. And Mike would help me deliver Sunday weddings my whole career. We would do the Sunday weddings so we didn't have to call staff in on their day off and travel all the way from their house to the shop downtown, back to the shop, and back home again for one cake. So we did until the last couple of years, and we had a couple of girls that wanted to do the Sunday deliveries, but for 23 years we did all the Sunday deliveries. So Mike said to me 2 weeks before we knew we were leaving, he said, can we just do one more delivery? It's like, are you crazy? I felt so bad asking him to go on deliveries. I feel like I was putting him, his day off, I was putting him on the spot. And here he is asking me if he can do one more delivery. Because I just think it'd be fun just to do one more and take pictures. And like, he's real sentimental. So I told Megan, Mike wants to do a delivery that last weekend. It was 28th of July. So she goes, I have the perfect one for you. We have several Sunday things going on, and this one goes downtown. I'll let you do that one. Not knowing that it had like 100 flowers to go on the cake. So when we got there, that big flower arrangement hanging over the cake was only a foot from the floor, and we assembled it down the room some and put the cake all together and got all the flowers in it. And then we had to then they got those flowers up high, that halo of flowers. So we saw them do all this. And then we had to wheel the table with this cake all stacked up across the floor and under those flowers. So I was glad Mike was with me to help.
I think 6 tiers, and it had flower tiers in between those tiers. And this is one of the most gorgeous photos I've seen of our cakes.
Yes.
This arrangement and the photographer. Yeah, I love this cake.
That was one of the other things. I sent you a few pictures. I don't know if you got them up or we'll have time, but I sent you a few pictures of just rooms. And more than just delivering the cakes, we did some awesome weddings, just mind-blowing weddings. And the rooms were just things that you could not hardly dream about. But there's such a creative event team in Indianapolis that does amazing things. And just seeing the rooms, forget the cake, just seeing the rooms of all these weddings was a thrill. It really was a thrill. And getting to all, and the event people in Indianapolis are very close. They all work together. We all know each other, and everybody works as a team. I've never met bad apple.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Let's see. Here's one. So we have some photos going around right now of an upside down cake that we're doing, and everyone thinks we just now invented this, but this is actually something that Ilene did. How long ago? When was this?
It's probably been about 8 or maybe even 10 years ago. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I'd say at least 8 years ago. 8 years ago.
What room is this in?
That is the top of Demore. That's Demore at the top of the Chase, now the Salesforce Tower looking down over the city. And it was actually for a photo shoot. It wasn't for a real wedding.
Really?
But they wanted the upside down cake. And so I decided to do it in real cake because my fear of doing a picture and showing it to the brides is, can we do it in real cake?
Yeah.
It's fun to construct things that are kind of crazy, but I wanted to know that we could do it in real cake and get it down there and get it up safely. So even though it was a photo shoot, we always do those in styrofoam, and it sure would have been a lot easier to move and hang and transport if it was in styrofoam. We actually did it in real cake.
Yeah, the photo shoot we did for the upside down cake was in Bloomington. So, and it was styrofoam, but transporting that, man, it is scary. That's probably the most nervous I've been with the delivery.
That was part of the challenge of the shop was people coming in and asking for something, and you didn't know how to do it. I mean, let's be honest, we didn't know how to do what they wanted, but you just smiled and said, yeah, we can do that. And then you close the doors and you go back to the decorating group and go, girls, we got to figure this out.
That's what we have, an amazing team of very different people. You have Sarah, who's very scientific in the way she approaches things, and Courtney is very artistic in the way she approaches things. And then you have people who have history with experience, and you pull all that together and you figure out a way to make it work.
Right. And there is a lot of that. Just you have to be creative and think, and you've delivered enough cakes that you kind of like Corinne's cake. You just kind of have an idea of what you're going to need to do. So
yeah,
this was a really cool wedding in a tent, just all white, but all white cakes I think are really elegant. But they need texture to see. See how much texture's on that cake?
Yeah.
The
So
bottom layer is piped, and that's the one that shows up the least.
that
But
was an interesting delivery. You and I did this delivery, and it
yep,
was in a tent outside in grass,
yep.
and the table legs kept tipping the cake.
Yeah, we carry shims in the van just for that.
Yes.
Everything that's in the van is because we've had an experience. You learn, So now I learned because I had trouble with the cake years and years and years and years ago, and we needed cardboard. It was outside in grass, and that's where it always happens. And the table was very uneven because of the land, not because of grass, but just the land was tilted. The table was on, and it was a huge, tall 6-tier cake with pillars between every single layer. And the cake looked like the Leaning Tower of Pisa when we got it up. And so I had to take it all the way apart, take it all the way down, and I had to find the florist who brought flowers in boxes and beg for some tear up a box to put under the table legs, trying to make it even. And it was nightmare.
Well, I think
now we carry shims.
that's the benefit of
because of that cake, we carry shims.
Yep. All right. I think I only have one more, unfortunately. It only uploaded these guys, but this is very important cake as well.
Yes, that was my last big hurrah at Classic Cakes. The wedding was in July, which is my last month there, and it was for the Earlys that owned Thomas Caterers, and we'd worked with them for years and years and years and years and years. And it was their only daughter, and she was getting married, and they asked us to do the cake, which we were so honored to do. And so they came in with all these ideas, and just kind of threw it at us and said, draw some, give us a design, draw something and use these ideas. So they had a lot of trees were very important in their wedding, and they actually had branches of trees attached to the pillars in the ballroom. It looked like a tree covering the whole ballroom. And bride and groom planted a tree after the wedding ceremony outside in a chapel covered with trees. So, there's this tree thing and branch thing going on. So that's why at the very bottom 2 tiers, there is a branch curving around those bottom 2 tiers of cake. So that meant something. And those bottom 2 tiers of cake are kind of wrinkled looking with little stripes in it. And that matched the table covers, the cloths on the tablecloth. And the next layer was just damask, and they brought pictures in that had that, and they liked it. And then the next tier, they have a gazebo on their property that's a pentagon, 5-sided gazebo on their estate. So they wanted a gazebo in the wedding cake. And they were doing the chandelier thing, as you can see. And there's chandeliers all over the ballroom, and this was a chandelier cake stand. And they wanted me to build a sugar chandelier inside the cake. So that's what that next to the top layer is. And I had never, this is again, something I'd never done. So I had to figure out how to do it. And it took me a week to build that chandelier, cover it in fondant, build the gazebo, cover it in fondant, put all that gold molding on it. And then I had to build the chandelier and pour all the crystals and put wires in them and hang the chandelier crystals on that cake. And then we put LED lights on the roof of the pentagon and lit up the chandelier. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It took a week just to do that piece. And then they came back and said they were having tables made. Some of the tables were going to be this gold on top, and it was antiqued. So, I mean, we'd done tons of cakes painted gold, but we had never done an antique gold where it's like brown spotted, but it looks cool, but it's antiqued. So they wanted that finish on the top tier. Then she came back to me later after we kind of planned the cake and said, fault line cakes are really cool. We want fault line in their cake. And I had never made a fault line cake, and here I am retiring on it because that was brand new. I don't even really know if we had done one yet in the store. Now we're doing a lot, but
yeah, I
don't think we had back at that time. So that bottom layer serves 120 people. It's actually split to look like it's cracked open, and there's inside the cake. It looks like you cracked the cake open and you saw something inside. So there was more of that antique gold inside that cake. So my first and only, no, I've done one more since then. My first fault line cake had to be in a cake that served 120, not like a cake that served 20.
That's so cool.
So yeah, that's that cake. So I joked, I put a big post on Facebook about it and said that was my last big hurrah, because it was my last huge project. And one of the things I liked about the shop was I usually got involved. I didn't get involved in the everyday stuff, the last 10 years because I had such a great staff, but I did get involved in all of the big projects.
That's awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to share about your experience, share for customers, or just about what your history was here?
Owning Classic Cakes was hard, and Megan's finding that out. And poor Megan having to start her year with all this hysteria going on. I just feel so bad. But it is so much work. I'm going to sit down one day and just write down every step it takes to get a wedding cake out of the door. I think people will be shocked. But I bet there's probably at least 30 steps you have to go through to get the cake on the table. And people just don't realize that everything's made by hand. Every pan's greased by hand, every board's covered by hand. You have to make a list for all the cakes. You have to make a list for the delivery. All that planning has to happen every week. And it just takes hours and hours of labor to get all that done. And even just a birthday cake, there's still, still all the labor. And, and as a cake shop owner, you have to make sure everything gets done. So I really didn't have much social life because people do their social life on Friday and Saturdays, on the weekends. And what was I doing? I was staying at the shop Friday night until everything was done. Because even birthday cakes, the majority of them went out Saturdays. The bridal showers went out. Everybody had their parties on the weekends. So everybody was picking up cakes. And then all the weddings, we had Friday weddings, we had Sunday weddings, but the majority were Saturday. So you had to get all those out. And so you did not go home Friday night till everything was done, because you couldn't just say, I don't think I'd rather go home and go to bed. I don't care if that girl gets that cake or not. If you took the order, you have to get it done. So there was years where I was there till midnight every Friday night. And my record was going in at 7 o'clock on a Friday morning, getting home at 7 o'clock on Saturday night. I worked 36 hours straight, didn't go to bed, got in the van and delivered wedding cakes. And so it is hard work. And we didn't have as much staff then. And you try to, people say, you're not taking any more orders. It's like, we got a life. We got to go home, folks. We can't take any more orders, okay? And so when they get mad sometimes, one lady yelled at me in the lobby and she backed out the door, and I said, I'm already working 70 hours a week. I don't know what more I can do for you. I think that's the only person I ever said that to, but she was just pushing back so much. I just felt like I just had to speak up. I said, I'm already working 70 hours. I don't know what else you want. And as she backed out the door, she says, well, work 80.
That didn't go well.
It's like, sorry, lady. I'm really sorry, but I can't take your order. So
I think that's the hard part, because you have a big heart too, and you always want to make sure that everybody gets the cake that they want, the cake that they dream of. And I remember talking to you before about you feel like everyone deserves an amazing cake.
Right.
But there's only so many hours in a day. And when you've built Classic Cakes to what it is now, there is more demand than we have time to do. We do have to turn away orders.
Right.
So that's hard. Right. That hurts. But that's just the way it has to be sometimes.
And, we do so much by hand, and we do so much custom work, the sugar work, all that takes time. And I just explained to the customers, the reason you're getting this special cake is because we can do the special work, but it takes time. And there's only so many hours in a day. But that's what I wanted. I wanted a custom shop. I wanted to be able to do things that nobody else in town was doing. And I wanted to be the first in town to do the next new technique or invent the next new technique. And I wanted it to everybody know it came from Classic Cakes.
That's awesome. Well, very cool. Thank you so much for your time. I know we would rather do this in person, but I'm glad I got to connect with you and share a little bit of your legacy with everybody. And we'll definitely have to do this again when we can do it in person.
Can I tell you one more quick story?
Of course, yeah.
I was going through a picture album today. I don't have very many print pictures because we've all gone to digital and it's hard to keep all those pictures. But I had photo albums I'd made for my dad, and I found one today. And so they were pictures from a long time ago. So I was going through the pictures and I found this birthday cake we did long time ago. These pictures were from, I don't know, early 2000 or somewhere around that time. Anyway, I saw a birthday cake in there. So I thought, I remember the cake, and there was a tag on it. I wonder who was that cake for again? So I looked and it said, "Happy 6th birthday, Mariah." And I knew right away who the cake was for, because I'm friends with her on Facebook and she's married. But we did her 6th birthday cake. And so I messaged her this afternoon on Facebook and said, "Guess what I just found?" And I took a picture of the picture and sent it to her. And I said, it was a pink cake. It had a hat on it with a feather, and it had necklaces and earrings on it. And it was a necklace and earrings on a 6th birthday cake, And she wrote me back and she goes, "Oh, I remember that cake." She said, "We had a dress-up party and we dressed up in hats and jewelry and all this stuff and paraded all around. So that's why you put that on my cake."
That's so cute.
Yeah.
Do you have a picture?
Yes. It's not a very clear picture because it's a photo. Oops.
There you are.
It's hard to see, but it's a hat with a feather sticking up, and you can see the gold earrings and a
That's awesome.
pearl necklace, and yeah. It was Mariah Bird's 6th birthday cake.
Cool.
So.
Well, we definitely have more pictures to go through. This only let me upload so many, so we'll plan on doing this again and getting through more of those pictures because I know there's a lot more stories.
I have a bunch sitting here too. I found today, so
yeah,
it's fun. It's fun to reminisce. I told my husband it's really been fun prepping just the last 2 days, getting you the pictures and going through stuff because I found memories I'd kind of forgotten about.
Yeah, it's cool to just appreciate the change over the last 50 years with cakes and with skill level.
Mm-hmm.
It's from just practice and years of decorating. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I found a picture of the original front of the store and it had green carpet in it. And Megan said, "Green carpet?"
Oh, like carpet. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Eileen. If anyone has any other questions they want to ask Eileen, go ahead and comment now. I'm sure she will check the comments and
answer them.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, this is Ilene McHone and Megan Ritz with Classic Cakes. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Pleasure.